Have you ever honored somebody who loved cars, but they have since passed? Now, it could be a family member, a close friend, or maybe someone you've never met but just respected, but they touched your life by passing on that passion to you. That is the focus of today's West of Tulsa Show. Everybody in house today has someone they want to talk about, and some of these folks you've heard about before. So if you have someone special, we would love to hear your story, and coming up, we'll explain how you can send us photos and videos, and we can share that story, everything with everybody on an upcoming show. Welcome to West of Tulsa. I don't want this to be a downer show. It's not going to be a downer. We're going to be uplifting here. It's a celebration of these folks.
Celebration of life.
That's why I got this hat on. You guys recognize the hat?
Yeah.
You see that?
Yeah, it was in Richard's office.
It was in Richard's office.
For our guests who don't know who Richard is, who may not have watched show one, explain that.
So Richard Keller created all of this. Well, he created West of Tulsa.
Yes.
And it's a kind of a museum that never opened to the public, a museum that never was. And he was a bomber pilot in World War II, and he worked. He was an aeronautical engineer after that, and he loved cars. In fact, when he died at the age of almost 105, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
He had 27 or 28 cars and trucks, and a lot of them were here in the warehouse.
Wow.
And we've sold most of them off at this point. I bought a couple, and we've sold them to good friends. And but he's a perfect example of what we're trying to do today.
Absolutely.
Right?
And what's on that hat, CJ? Just so I can't really see it on that
it's
shot.
his bomber. If I pull it down like that, you can see it.
Okay.
It's the bomber group.
It's like a B-25.
The B-24.
B-24
bomber
okay.
group. Yep. And so his office is full of this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, the old photos, and it shows some of the airplanes that he used to fly, and he did serve in World War II. In fact, his big training mission was he was going to be one of the pilots who would be part of the Japanese invasion, the mainland. And he always said, if that ever happened, I wouldn't be here. He never believed that they would ever survive that.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, but he's a huge car guy, and it's funny because the cars that he bought were the kind that were kind of mechanically interesting. You know, Corvairs and Studebakers and
He was an engineer type, obviously.
Engineer type, yeah.
He bought a car for the engineering, not for the car itself,
Right.
for the
Exactly.
engineering that went into the car.
Exactly. So everybody out there listening, watching, they have somebody in their life that turned that passion on with them, and that's what we want to do today. We want to honor those folks. And then we're going to have shows coming up where you can... Hopefully we inspire you to send us some information about who you want to honor, and then we'll add the photos and the videos, and Dan will work his magic, and Gabe will work his magic, and we'll do beautiful tributes to everybody you want to tribute to.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have actually heard a couple stories from our viewers, that told us about somebody who had passed or something that they did in memorial for these people.
And that's where this idea came from. You kind of came up with it. You thought, this would be a good show to do.
Yeah. I mean, I've got two stories that I wanted to share. I was just like, that's a car person passing away is definitely unique because they're car people.
Yeah.
If they're like legit car people,
It's a tight community. So.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard of stories where some dude was buried with his car.
Yeah.
Oh,
I've
yeah.
seen pictures of that. Yeah.
China, in a
crazy.
Mercedes.
Yeah.
I've seen that
it was some
story.
kind of Mercedes.
Yeah,
I'm like,
I've seen that story.
I mean, I don't know if that's like the biggest like fuck you to the cemetery, but I was like, that's something.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I think it's a shame that car will never get used again, but
Well, maybe it is being used in a way.
Whatever, Dan.
You never know. You never know.
Yeah.
It's an afterlife car.
And
The
that's
ghost
thing,
of that
too.
Mercedes, right?
Like when people pass, then their builds become very special and get passed on or bought and memorialized basically, and so that's pretty special.
Well, and how many times have you heard where somebody always had the dream of doing a build, they never did it, they pass, and then somebody comes along, a family member, a friend comes along and finishes what the dream was.
Yeah,
the tribute
You
build,
love
right?
those kinds of stories. But
yeah.
Well, I want to start with you, Christina. I mean, who would you like to honor?
Well, the one person that really stands out for me and was a big inspiration was Jessi Combs. She is known for her land speed record for the fastest woman on four wheels, but she passed about 5 years ago now. And unfortunately, she passed while she was trying to do a land speed record. And fortunately, she was recognized for that and was put in the Guinness Book of World Records for it. So that was, at least that happened. But she was a huge inspiration for women in the automotive industry. She was a builder. She was a welder. She had a lot of passion for cars. She learned from her dad. Her dad was a mechanic, and she worked with her dad a lot. She was on a lot of shows back in the day. Overhauling, All Girls Garage. So many Mythbusters. I think she was on an episode of.
Oh wow!
Yeah, she was awesome, and it was just second nature for her. So she was like a huge inspiration. And I know when she passed, they started the Jessi Combs Foundation, which is pretty awesome. They offer scholarships for women in the industry, so like welding or mechanics, and they're going strong. They're a great foundation. They actually, I think, had several women that they were able to give scholarships to this year in 2024. So for me, she was like somebody who really stood out in the industry that I kind of grew up watching.
Had you met her before?
No, I
Okay.
wish that would have been really cool to be able to have met her, but no, I've just watched a lot of her stuff, especially on YouTube. And the land speed stuff is really cool for me just because I have some history with my family. My grandpa and my uncle used to do Bonneville Salt Flat land speed stuff. So it was always like kind of interesting to me. And, it's tragic, but it's amazing when someone passes like that. Some good can come from it with the whole foundation that they started. So, so she was a big.
Yeah.
So she was
I remember when that happened, it's one of those things where you almost have to stop for a second and go, wait a minute. I know exactly who that is.
Yeah.
And she's so young.
Yeah.
And that was my first reaction.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what happened?
I want to say she was like 39.
Yeah.
Or something
Wow.
when she
For
passed.
our audience, could you give a little context about how she did pass? Because that was a big deal, right?
So I guess they think what happened was while she was running, there was mechanical failure with one of the wheels, which caused, and you could tell, they said they could tell that she really tried to like steer, and like she really tried to do everything she could do, and she, I think, ended up just dying instantly when there was some sort of impact. So, and the car did end up catching on fire, but they said that she passed before that actually happened. So,
Do you know what speed?
yeah. So
was?
they ended up getting her in the world record book for I want to say it was like 522.
Jeez.
522 miles an hour.
I think it was 522 or 520 something.
That's
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, it was insane. Yeah, and it was. I think she broke that record because she had set a record too. I think earlier on, but yeah. So it was definitely like 520 something. I think. Yeah.
Wow.
There's no margin for error at that speed. I
Yeah.
mean, if anything happens,
No.
you're done.
Yes.
I mean, you go into
yes.
that accepting the risks, obviously, not to justify it, but like I could possibly pass away.
Yeah, and there's video of her. She was giving an interview, and she was like, I could die. Like I probably will die, but like life is short, and this is what I want to do, and things don't get done unless you are
Push the
willing
limits,
to push the limits
That's
like
right.
that. So she knew. She talked about it a lot, and I think that's just part of how people that inspire, like that's their motto.
Yeah.
You know,
When you're
So,
committed, you're committed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, the interesting to remember the Hammonds, Seth Hammond, when we were talking about the show, and they talked about the 300 Club,
Yeah.
200, 300. There can't be many members of the 500
That's when I
Club.
hear the 500 Club. That's insane.
That is
Yeah.
insane
500.
speed.
Not even 400. I mean,
I know,
it's
right?
like-
Yeah.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing.
That's a good one to
So,
honor.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Wow. And that Jessi Combs Foundation, is that what it's called?
Yeah, Jessi Combs Foundation. They have an Instagram page and a website. I would love to be able to do like an all-female car show and try and raise funds for them. I just think they're a great foundation. So I've shared them a couple times on the Miss Motorhead page for people.
Well, we'll have to do something like that. Maybe a link. I don't know how you know how to handle all that stuff. Links. Put links to it.
Yeah,
Definitely
absolutely.
put a link to
Everything.
that.
All right. Anything else about Jessi Combs or anybody else? Anybody else?
Well,
want to honor?
obviously we have like one of the biggest people recently who passed away in the last few years was Ken Block. He he was huge, especially because I'm in the Subaru community, and he was huge in the Subaru community. He did a lot of rally and like the whole Gymkhana thing. Like, so when he passed, it was kind of a big deal. It was a lot of people memorialized him with stickers and liveries, and he made a big impact on people's lives. And I've had a couple of friends who've met him or had ride-alongs with him, and he was just such a great down-to-earth person. And so it's really awesome to see his daughter follow in his footsteps. Leah, she just did last year. I think she did a run up Pikes Peak with his car.
Oh wow!
So it's really cool. She's awesome, and she's gonna do big things because of her dad. So it's sad, but again, it's like at least she's taking that effort to like memorialize her dad and do all these things. So yeah.
I think it's one of the coolest things in the car community when the reactions of what people, I guess it's a call to action for the friends and family of these people who have passed on. You really see the impact. And unfortunately, you see how big the impact was after they passed, but you see how much and how many people that they affected. And even if it's just like, your homie down the street or Ken Block or Paul Walker or, Jessi Combs, you're just like, wow, this is amazing. How could you not?
Well, Paul Walker's a good example. After he passed, he had a home in Santa Barbara up on the Mesa. And we started hearing all these stories of all these amazing things Paul Walker did in the community that nobody knew about. And one of them was an example. I guess he went into a jewelry store. I don't know which one. And he happened to be standing there for whatever he was doing there, and he heard this young couple talking about a certain ring that they wanted for the upcoming wedding. And I guess it was they're going back and forth between which ring they wanted. One was more expensive than the other, whatever it was. Paul Walker told the jeweler to take the most expensive one that they wanted, and he bought it.
No.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so you wouldn't have heard those stories.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And you find out what kind of life they led and how many, like you said, how many positive, how many lives they touch positively.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it just goes back to our show, basically, is that we're trying to tell stories to leave a legacy forever with people. Yeah. Obviously, we won't cover everybody's story but in our lifetimes here, but we try to cover as much as we can because it'd be nice to memorialize this stuff or remember this stuff before people pass.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then even beyond,
And it's a huge inspiration thing. It's the story. The reason we love to listen to stories is for inspiration. And when you hear stuff like that about Paul, maybe that will inspire somebody to go do the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's the stories are a big deal. And if we're not going to tell the stories, who is, and how are you going to be inspired? And so
we've had so many people on the show that if you look back, this is episode 42. We've done 41 shows so far that we've had guests on where it's like, I've never heard of this, but what they're doing is amazing. The Hot Wheels racing thing. Well, think of the lives that they're touching. They got all these little kids out there that are getting into racing because of Hot Wheels.
That which could be future racers or builders.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So even their parents get into it.
Yeah. Right. So those stories matter for sure, and I'm really glad we're telling them. You're right, Christine. No one else is telling these stories, so we are, and that's kind of the goal.
I wish Helm was here again, but because Helm was there when Paul Walker passed away.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
He was there.
He told that story a little bit.
He actually heard the crash because they were down the street from the shop that they were at. And, Helm will tell you the story. But after, it was just like he looked at him. He waved at him when he drove out the driveway. And then, he was gone.
Yeah.
Just.
I can imagine how that would sit with someone when you've actually experienced it.
And then it makes you wonder, because I even question, it makes me wonder, do I want to hop in a car with a buddy of mine? Yes.
Trust.
Yeah.
Yes, you are trusting somebody with your life because he wasn't the one driving when you passed, right? And, you hear people say, too much car, not enough driver. And, there's all kinds of things that happen. Professional drivers pass away and all that stuff. But, you know,
the end result is the same.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You die,
Yeah.
you die. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter why you died.
Right.
Yeah.
You're gone.
Right.
yeah. I mean, I thought I was going to die a few times when Steve Feist was taking me for a ride when he was hot rods. But, you know.
And you're still here.
I'm still here.
Oh, there you go. That's good.
I don't know if how much more I'll be doing that, but, you know.
You got a daughter.
yeah,
You got a
exactly.
daughter. You got to
So,
think about that.
yeah.
Who you
When
hop
you're
in a
gone, we'll
car
talk
with.
about all the great things you did on social
Yeah,
media.
I hope one of the stories is how Gabe never finished any of his projects. Because right now, my whole life has been about not finishing projects.
Well, maybe your daughter will.
I hope
It's
so.
You're leaving her a legacy of unfinished car
that's
projects.
right.
Gabe.
I just hope she doesn't paint all my cars pink. Her favorite color.
So,
pink.
which one do you want us to do first? You
I
just
don't
let
know.
us
I don't know, man.
Oh man. Well, is that it? I mean,
Yeah.
Okay. Well, those are good ones.
I mean, we've had recently in our car community, we had Nicole Ryan pass away. She had MS, but I only met her, I think, twice. Melissa was really good friends with her. She made a huge impression on our car community, and they're the ones that run Good Vibes.
I saw her when we were up there.
Yeah.
Her and her husband.
Her
I
and her
saw get out of their
husband,
car and I
Jay,
shot some
yeah.
footage of him.
She
Yeah, and I was
passed
like,
away,
oh,
and
poor
it
lady.
was
Must
a
have been
big deal.
recently then.
Oh yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I want to say maybe a month or two ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
She passed away, but that was a big deal. So she made a huge impression. She was big in the industry. I think she did like an automotive or some sort of show. I didn't know her that well. Melissa introduced me to her recently, so before she passed. But yeah, so that was really hard when she passed. But they did a lot of raising funds for the issues that she had, the MS. I don't know the exact foundation that they were supporting, but the community really rallied around her and Jay. So that was pretty amazing.
I mean, she was up there a month or two before she passed,
Yeah,
and that was cool to see that she was
Yeah.
actually still there in the trees and the mountain air and
Yeah.
seeing all the beautiful cars and everything.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. MS is definitely a sad thing to witness. You know,
It's a
your
sad
loved
way to
ones.
go, for
Yeah,
sure.
it really is. But they made the best of it, and I think everybody really supported and rallied around them. So that was nice. So that's
Dan-
it, though.
Dan, anybody you want to?
I don't have anyone
No?
specifically, but I do have an interesting sort of topic.
Here we
'cause
go.
I did a little bit of research.
Wait a minute.
on
Is
it.
this a car guy or non-car guy?
This could
Which
be
one does
either.
this fall in?
This could
Okay.
be
This
either.
is the Dan research hour, right? This is where Dan does his interesting research, because I was amazed that he actually could even find or even thought to look for this stuff. But I like this take, so I'm looking forward to Dan explaining his
Okay, well,
memorial
like
section.
I don't know, like 20 years ago, I saw a pickup truck, sitting on the 101 in traffic and so on. I saw a pickup truck, and it was like in memory of Juan Estrella, blah blah blah. The dates that the guy passed and so on. And I saw that, and I went, I've never seen a car that has like a memorial on it like that. And Gabe and I were talking about this the other day and prepping for this show, and it's kind of like I did a little bit of research. This is a huge thing, and it kind of seems to have grown out of Latino car culture, particularly lowriders, but not just lowriders. I've seen it on trucks, SUVs,
Yeah.
you name it. But I don't know if in Latin countries that's more of a thing, and it kind of carried up here since we have so much Latin culture here and so many Latin people here, Latino people here. But you see this in LA a lot. I mean, if you're sitting in traffic on the 405 and the 101, you see these memorial tributes. And I was curious. I was like, do people just do this? And I Googled it, and on Amazon, there's like 300 or 400 rear car memorials, and you can literally put a giant picture of the past person's face on the back of your car, and you can say anything you want. People do their dogs. People do their relatives, obviously. My mom.
Yeah.
Oh, my mom passed, and so on. And I found this, it's sort of a fascinating thing. Like, would any of you guys put this on your car? If someone close to you passed, would you put a tribute on your car?
I personally wouldn't, but I'm very particular about what I put on my car.
Yeah.
But I also don't want to like see my mom's face on the back of my car all the time. So I'm just gonna not like that. But I understand that why people do. I mean, some people just have a really hard time with letting go, and that's their way of coping and and seeing it every day maybe just gives them those memories again. So
Yeah,
I get it.
And I've seen some car people specific ones where this was obviously a car guy. You know, I saw it on a '57 Chevy or a '55 Bel Air or whatever. A hot rod guy, you know, a Steve Feist kind of guy.
Yeah.
But I've seen it Latino. I've seen it Asian. You know, where there was like a bunch of like Korean lettering on the back and so on. In LA, you see all this stuff because LA is the melting pot of the United
Many
States,
cultures,
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, to speak to the lowriders, I know that a lot of the lowriders, especially the ones where the whole family builds the one car.
Yeah.
They have a one car garage, and the only thing that's in that garage is that lowrider
With $100,000 paint job.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and that it is the family heirloom, so it
For
makes
sure.
sense for the families to honor someone who's passed away that's part of that family with that car, because that is the kind of like the cornerstone of their automotive existence, I guess you would say.
Right.
So that does make sense, But then, but that's also extended because we are, like you said, a melting pot. Other people see it as like, oh, I want to do that too, and I'll do it for my dog, which I've never seen someone do that for their dog, which I think is kind of weird. But hey, whatever. Maybe their dog was a car.
I
dog.
have actually seen it a lot for pets.
Yeah.
Animals.
Well, these days, I mean, for a lot of people, their pets are their kids.
Yeah.
Literally.
Right.
It's like our population slowdown, our slowdown in population growth. They say a lot of it is people are just displacing on pets.
Yeah.
They're not having kids because pets are cheaper and easier than having kids.
Yeah.
But
right.
but I found that whole thing kind of fascinating, and I have a little bit of experience. I actually shot like a pilot that never went anywhere with black lowriders in L.A. And there was this whole interesting
black
dynamic.
lowrider cars or black people?
No, black people.
Oh, okay.
Like black
Okay.
lowriders.
Okay.
People of color. Well, both people are people of color, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, right.
But it was interesting the compare and contrast between the Latino lowrider culture and the black lowrider culture. And a lot of people don't know, black people claim that they invented lowriders, not Latinos.
Right.
I've heard that.
So, but it was interesting hanging with them. And in the time we hung with those people, there were a couple people that passed. And we went to some big events, and they had like the chrome placard on the rear deck of the lowrider.
Right. Yeah.
So it's kind of fascinating. It's like it shows the importance of cars in people's lives, that these can become a rolling memorial tribute to a loved one. That's kind of interesting, I think.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big a draw to doing this show, or to doing a call to action, which we'll do later in the show, for people to share their stories about loved ones that passed away, car people that have passed away, is that the community in that, whether it be your family or your friends or a whole like Subaru community or
Your
whatever.
car homies.
The pet
right.
community.
Or the pet community, yeah. I mean, that's where you see. I mean, how many people have we heard sitting here in these chairs have told us they only got into that car because of the community, or they got into it because their friends were into it, or their family was into it.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
this is so. There's such a humanistic value to this that you can't ignore.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really touching. I don't care if you're a car person or not. Some people like doing these memorials for people that have passed away. It's just really touching. You're like, wow, you're trying to honor this person. I think that's really, really cool. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were telling me a story at one of the Cars and Coffees about, remember the guys with the Hondas and
Yeah.
that's a great story. That's a perfect example. Of what you're
Absolutely. I
talking
forgot. It's the Peralta family. They're here locally in Oxnard, Ventura area. And I was racing with these guys back in the day. And one of their buddies, or brother buddy, whatever, his name is Norman. And they were in a car. They got into a car accident coming back from a shop in North Hollywood. And the car, I forgot exactly how it happened, but the car, they crashed. Norman passed away. And
From the crash.
From the crash.
Okay.
And he had a son who hadn't been born yet. And the son, is now, that was 20 some years ago. All the guys got out of the cars, all the Hondas and all that stuff. Well, when Norman Jr. got old enough, he's in the cars, all the uncles and stuff, they all got Hondas again, so they can roll together with him.
Wow.
And they're not just Hondas, they're pretty slick, like old school, like these things are done perfect.
Yeah.
But they were putting these cars together in honor of.
Exactly. But they had stopped for a long time.
Yeah.
But when they saw Norman Jr. kind of like being interested, and they didn't want him to do it by himself, his whole car club of uncles,
family,
they all got
the
together.
Carr family got back together.
Which I was just like, dude,
It's a great story.
So
That's
Yeah,
really
that's
cool.
awesome.
As a matter of fact, actually, back in the day when Norman had passed, he had a pretty fast Honda for that time. They did a whole tribute to his car. After he passed, they went to the Battle of the Imports, and they put the Honda wings, the motorcycle Honda wings, on the side of the car. And they took the car out and made.
I think I remember that.
It was a big deal because I mean there were tears everywhere. I was crying. Everybody was crying because if he finally made that, it was 11-second pass, which was fast back in that day.
Right.
And that was like kind of like the memorial for Norman when he passed.
Yeah.
But then 20 some odd years later, they're doing it memorializing again with building the cars for Norman Jr. I was like,
Great
that's
story.
so cool.
Yeah, that is
great
really
way to
cool.
do it.
Yeah,
I love that.
So it's a really cool thing the way the car culture comes together.
Yeah.
So
Dan, did you want anything else about the rear window memorials?
Well, I guess I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about like, do you people deal with their grief in many different ways, as we know, and this kind of bleeds into the roadside memorial thing. And I'm sure you've all seen these. I mean, we see them here in the county. We see them everywhere. See them, bicycles, and they're all painted with flowers on them and stuff. And they end up starting to look crappy because of the weather and the elements, and no one comes and cleans it up or maintains it. But what do you think it's tacky, or do you think it's interesting, or do you think it's sort of touching? I mean, what are your guys' opinion about this, about these car memorial things?
I mean, I think it's touching, but I would say as somebody who doesn't know the story behind whatever the memorial is, if I see 2 or 3 of them all in the same area, I slow down. I'm like, okay.
Absolutely.
you look at it as a warning
I
sign.
look at it as
Okay.
too many people have died on this stretch. I'm slowing down. And that because they usually put the memorials where the accidents happen.
Yeah.
True.
And so if you see 2 or 3 in a quarter-mile stretch, you're like, okay. I'm
I'm
pulling
always
over or whatever.
like wondering what the story was.
Yeah.
Every time I see a white cross or something on the side of the road,
Yeah.
I'm always like curious as to what
happened.
And I think also too, part of being a mother, I have that like empathy where I'm like, oh my goodness, something happened. I do slow down and I take it into consideration. And I actually I think that they're special. I don't think I've ever had anybody that I've known that has thought otherwise. They've always just appreciated that, and again, it's a way for the family to, I think, memorialize like what happened and to draw attention to being careful and whatever the story might be.
Well, have you guys driven past the James Dean death scene?
many times.
Yeah,
Where is that?
I've never.
It's
on.
Shalem is the name of the town.
Is it off 46 up there?
Well, it's right where the 41, 46 meet.
Yeah.
So
I've been.
So
up there.
I used to live in Fresno, and I would drive down to see Beth every weekend when she was living in Santa Barbara. Before we got
in your
married.
Hyundai?
In my Hyundai. and I did too. It was in the Hyundai. And so I would drive past there, twice a week, twice a week.
Yeah,
going past.
it's the back way if
yeah.
you're going up through like Paso Robles and so on, and you head out there towards Fresno,
Exactly.
in the farm country out there. It's in the middle of nowhere, basically.
Go to Paso Robles, turn right on, I think 46.
Yeah,
and then you connect to
46.
and then you transition to the 41.
Okay.
It's
You've probably
right where that
driven through there,
transition is.
Gabe. You just
I
didn't know.
just drove not through that. I drove past the 46 on my way from Marysville to this weekend. So I know exactly where that's at. I didn't know that was where
I didn't either.
And you'll see a big tribute. It's about a quarter mile down. If you're heading to the west, it's about a quarter mile to the right.
Yeah.
There's a little rest stop, and I think there was a restaurant there at one point. Don't know if there is. But there is a James Dean Memorial there.
I know this is going to probably piss off a lot of people.
How dare you be
Say it
controversial?
anyway.
I know, right? Why? I mean, I understand that James Dean was a badass, and I get all that. But if his passing, if the way he passed, didn't happen, would it have the same effect that it has on people? Because I've seen a lot of people like that. I mean, they're hardcore James Dean fans, maybe even dress like him. I've seen people dress like him or whatever. I mean, it's not a bad person to dress like, but would the death have if he was still alive today, let's just say, would it have the same effect as his passing did? Because I feel like that's part of the mystique of James Dean.
Oh, yeah.
He was gone too
How it
soon,
happened.
right?
Live fast, die young, leave
Yeah.
good-looking corpse. That's where that saying came from. It's
Yeah.
James Dean.
Well, and I think that it's the case with a lot of people. I think people get a little bit of like an infatuation with the idea of death, and it becomes this. And I know Paul Walker was amazing. He was a great actor, and everybody loves the Fast and Furious movies. But it's kind of like that with him too. I think.
I agree.
I think with his passing, it just caused a huge shift and stir in like the community, and so I think that definitely has.
Well, with
plays a
Paul
big
Walker
part.
too, he died with doing almost
Yes.
what we saw in the movies.
Exactly.
Right.
When you
Yeah.
look
Which
at
is
that, you're
crazy.
like, wow,
Yeah.
that's just
Yeah.
insane that's how
Yeah.
he died.
Right.
For
You know,
sure.
the thing about James Dean was just starting to reach the peak of his career.
Yeah.
He was the hottest actor at the time.
Yeah.
He'd worked with some of the biggest actors. He was
Yeah.
super young. He had that kind of the rebel without a cause.
Exactly.
He had that
Yeah.
attitude, and all of a sudden here he is in this Porsche, going to go on a race, and then boom,
Yeah,
he's killed.
no, it's very romantic.
It's romantic,
It's, it's a romantic
Yeah,
thing, which sounds
right,
perverse, but it's true.
It's true though. People do romanticize death. I think that's it's that's just how it is.
It reminds me of Steve Irwin, getting killed by a
Yeah.
Oh,
stingray.
yeah.
But I was like,
Yeah.
well, of course, because that's what he does for a
That's-
living. It'd be
yeah.
weird if he was killed on the 101 freeway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So I was like, okay, that when I've heard that he passed away, I was like, how did he die? And I was like, oh, well, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
he's escaped death how many other times?
Right.
Well, and it's the 27 Club with the rock stars, Jim Morrison,
Yeah.
Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, they're rock stars. They died essentially doing
Yeah.
drugs, right?
Right.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
The rock star thing.
Yeah, it's the romanticized
Yeah.
death, right?
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm glad we cheered everybody up.
It's kind of a morbid show, but it's true, though. It's interesting to talk about.
I hope you're
though.
feeling better after about 30 minutes and you're feeling good.
Oh, yeah.
By the way, since you love the show so much, like, follow, subscribe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, that would be great. Just
More death.
Hit that like button.
More death coming at you.
subscribe. That would be great.
We need feedback. Do you want us to talk about death more? Because whatever will get us the follows, I mean,
Thank you, Gabe, for coming up with this great
well,
idea.
anything to do. Well, okay. So speaking of that, the whole topic came up because I was over at Rotary 13B one's shop. Andy Lee is down. His shop is down in Temple City, and he's part of the 7-stock team with Bernie Herrera, who he had on the show. And I was down there doing a photo shoot of some of his cars, and in his outside parking lot, there was a I forget what year it is, but it's a FC RX7, so it's the second gen RX7. And it was sitting out there, and it had a roll cage in it and some racing seats in it, and it was just, you could tell it's been sitting out there for a couple of years, full of cobwebs, and I'm shooting pictures of it. I'm like, what's the story with this car? So I asked Andy, and then I asked Bernie, but Andy was like, hey, this was a car that was one of our members, his name's LC, and Bernie, they went halves on this car to track it. And he ended up getting I think a form of colon cancer. It was like an aggressive one. And they went racing with that car before he passed. And when he passed, the car kind of went to Bernie, and now it's just kind of sitting there. And I was like, man, that's I mean, that was just, my heart was just like, oh my gosh, because they all went racing with and he left a 5-year-old daughter behind, and I was just like, man. And Bernie had sent me all these pictures, which we'll show, of them all together. He's part of the team, and then they got together, and then they built this car together, and they went racing, and they still have this car. And I was like, man, we should probably get this thing back on the track.
Yeah.
How cool would that be?
You're going to honor somebody.
Yeah,
You get it
obviously,
back on the track.
When COVID hit and all that stuff, they couldn't do that anymore. But it's just stuff that time gets in the way and work and all that stuff. But man, that would be cool if we could just do that real quick and honor him.
Yeah.
With that being said, last year at 7-stock, and we talked about this with Bernie on the show, the guy who won the Repu, was the rotary engine pickup truck class. His name was Dan Gleason. And what he did was he had his Repu truck, but basically it was like a Repu truck on a RX-8 chassis. It had all RX-8 undergear. It's like seats and floor plan and everything. And then even the remote control from the RX-8 worked on the car.
Wow.
And it was the coolest. It was my favorite car of 7-stock last year. And I was fortunate enough to walk with Bernie to hand him the award, and he was like totally taken back, and he was just like, "Oh my god!" The guy drove it from Chicago and back.
Wow!
I was like, "Holy smokes!" This guy drove this.
I remember
thing.
hearing about that.
Right?
Yeah,
and I found out that he passed away just recently.
Oh wow!
And Bernie and the 7-stock team, they honored him on a post and stuff like that. But I was just like, man, wow. And he wanted to come back. I guess his wife or girlfriend or somebody commented on the post saying that he really wanted to come back the following year to show his truck. And I was looking forward to seeing his truck because it was such a cool build and so unique. And he was gone. I was like, oh man. And I met the guy. I got to shake his hand and say hi and ask him about the truck. And now he's gone. I was like, man.
Wow.
I was like, ugh.
and I saw some of the comments.
Yeah,
saw some of the comments that saying, he was a guy who was totally into Rotary before anybody else was into Rotary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
he took the abuses that most Rotary guys take and was like, why would you do that? That's so dumb. You should swap an LS or something or whatever. And he's like, no, I'm still sticking with it. And he was a Mazda tech for years or whatever. So, he was living the Rotary life, I was like, Rotary, hey, but when I heard that story, I was like, oh, man, that's just crazy to me.
Well, life is short. It's
well, and everybody has somebody they want to honor. So hopefully folks listening to this, watching, have somebody in mind.
Yeah, and that's why we want to encourage people.
Yeah.
Watching the shows, like that was the really call to this show is we want to hear everybody's stories about a loved one that's passed away and how you've honored them, or even if you don't know the person, if it's something you heard of or whatever, it's just kind of cool. Like when we told Christina about the show, the first thing she mentioned was Jessi Combs. I'm like, oh man, I forgot that she passed away. Yeah. It just can happen that easily.
We can memorialize and immortalize. We can,
the guy from American Pickers.
He just died. Frank.
He just passed away. Loved that show. I watched that, and so I was sad. Because it's funny, you don't know somebody, but you think you do because you watch them over and over, and then they pass, and it's sad. Yeah. But
that makes me feel really good about our Hot Rod Legends show. If you haven't watched it or listened to it, please do.
Yes.
We had 11 panelists on there that were all telling stories, and I'm so glad they were able to tell at least a little bit of their story. Because a lot of these guys were in their 80s, some in their 90s. Yeah. Some had already passed, but they were able to talk about them on the show. And I was like, man, how cool is this? And this stuff, if they had never told it, you're not going to find this on the internet.
And that's what we were jamming to get that show put together because, one of the guys who helped us put that together, Seth Hammond, when I spoke to him maybe a few weeks before we had the event, he said, God, if we would have done this 6 months ago, we'd have 2 more of the guys here.
Yeah.
And so that's why we were like, okay, there's a sense of urgency here. Let's get this.
And those guys definitely were like the legends of Hot Rod. These are like the grandfathers of Hot Rod and basically everywhere in the world.
I feel so lucky that I was able
you were there.
To be there and listen to them. It was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
Wasn't it?
I loved that show. Yeah. I feel like we need more shows like that. We need more.
And Dan and CJ and I, we were all worried, like people are going to think this is boring or too long or whatever.
No one
left. No one left. And that show was long.
Yeah.
I could have done it for another hour or two. I could have been listening to more stories.
Yeah. I was about to say the one guy who did left because he drove a 1933 Indy car that had no headlights.
Oh, that's right.
Get home before it's too late.
So he had to leave to go before the sunset.
He had a curfew.
He had a curfew.
Yeah, I think doing something like that again would be cool. Obviously, we'll do it differently. But I would like to get more people on the show. Like pretty soon, we're gonna have Bob Muravez, who we talked about, Floyd Lippincott, a.k.a. Floyd Lippincott.
Love his
story. We're going to do his story soon.
A
lot of the old San Fernando Valley hot rod guys know about him. We're excited to cover his story, and we just want to keep covering stories of these guys, and not just them, but we're hearing about stories about just people randomly across the country. That's why we want to have a call to action to all you people listening and watching. Hey, send us your stories. Email us at the tip line. Plug for the tip line, and email us your stories. Just send us a couple pictures, a little story, and we'll talk about it on the show. And if we're able to get you on the show, like cool. But at the very least, let's just talk about your show. You get it on camera.
Totally.
Tell your story, and
And we've been trying not to separate season 1 from season 2, but we do have season 2 coming up.
Yeah, well, I mean,
And we're going to make some cool changes.
Yeah, it's going to be a new year, new you.
Yeah. we're going kind of high tech, higher tech. Dan, how would you put it?
We're going to be able to talk to people all over the world. Is
There
a
we
big
go.
deal.
There we go.
We're gonna do stuff that a typical podcast doesn't do, unless
That's
it's like one of the
awesome.
really high end ones that actually has money. And we're gonna be able to
Yeah, we have no
bring
money.
in-
In case you guys are wondering, we have zero money.
We're gonna be able to bring in guests from all over the world, though, and all over the country, especially, which will be really cool.
Yeah,
and,
Yeah.
and
I mean,
there's-
that is the biggest focus for us now, even more so than ever. Now, this is show 42.
show 42. Yep.
The more we talk to people, the more we want to get these stories. But obviously, this stuff takes time, money, and efforts. And, we're doing what we can. But we just want to find ways to get stories more and more and faster and easier. So, a lot of people, we can't fly them in or they can't come in. So
Yeah.
we're going to try to get to them wherever they are, remotely or whatever. And
Considering we live in a Zoom world now,
Yeah.
you can Zoom to wherever.
yeah. At
Whoever.
the end of the day, we just want to get the stories captured. We want
Yeah.
to get them captured, and
Yeah.
hopefully they'll come with a lot of pictures. A lot of these guys that we get pictures from, they take pictures of a picture. They're that old school.
Yeah.
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 Which is fine. We'll take
Yeah,
whatever we
we'll
can
take
get.
it. We'll take it.
But guys like Tony Baker, the historian, capturing all these guys' stories, he could only do so much because he does it in written books.
Right.
We're just trying to do it at a faster rate digitally, of course. So
Well, speaking of photos that we'll take, I spoke to Uncle Eddie down in Florida, and he sent me a photo.
I remember Uncle Eddie. Yeah.
In
You
case
talked
our
about
And
this.
you
listeners
guys
don't
thought he had the RV in the driveway, or
well, they're thinking of the vacation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No,
Nice shitter.
Shitter's full.
Yeah, this is actually my Uncle Eddie who lives down in Vero Beach, Florida.
CJ's Uncle Eddie.
And I
Yeah.
said, he watches every show. He goes, I know you guys are on show number whatever 41. I'm like, I don't even know what show number. And I said, he goes, yeah, I used to have a Corvette. And I said, well, send me a photo of you on the Corvette.
Yeah.
So he finally did. So we'll put this up right now.
Okay.
Okay. And it's, I don't know if it was a 1965 selfie or not, but it's all. And Eddie, you'll have to explain it to us, but it's all crooked, and the car, you see like a little piece of the car, and there's part of Eddie's head. So I'll put it up there. You guys will get it. It's very funny.
Let's take a look at that.
Actually, speaking of which, this is I think a perfect time to talk about like people that have reached out to us.
Yeah.
Someone who just recently reached out to us, I think last night, as a matter of fact, and it ties in with kind of what we talked about earlier. Was a guy by the name, I forget his name, is Thomas. I'm gonna get it right here. He actually messaged us, complimenting us. He likes the stories that we're telling and
He's
whatnot.
super talented, man.
Yeah, Thomas Michael Patsis. I'm sorry if I screwed up your name, dude. But he sent us a bunch of pictures, and he said that he was I'm gonna quote him, motorsports metal artist. I'm like, bro,
Yeah.
what is that?
Intriguing.
And he tells me, and he sends me a bunch of pictures. Apparently, this guy does all the NHRA trophies. The metal sculpture trophies. He makes them.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And
That is
he
cool.
he used to work for Schumacher Racing in Indianapolis, and that's where he is.
Michael Schumacher. Yeah.
No, not Michael Schumacher.
Michael?
As a Don Schumacher.
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
all right.
And he sent me a bunch of pictures, and one of the pictures was of Jessi Combs, him and Jessi Combs, and a model or a replica of her
The jet car. I
the
think,
jet
right?
car, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, what?
And
are
not
the-
knowing that
not knowing,
Christina
yeah.
was going to be on
Yeah.
today talking
and
about
he
it.
doesn't know that we're talking about him on the show. Now he will, and I'll tell him. But I just thought that in his Instagram handles, Cold Hard Art, and man, it some of the stuff he's got there, it's
Beautiful.
absolutely incredible.
We're going to get him on the show with our new technology.
Yeah.
We're gonna get him on
Yeah.
the show.
Love those craftsmen.
Yeah,
love
super
the people that are
talented.
still doing it old school.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
working with metal.
And he doesn't look like an old coot, so he looks like a
He doesn't
fairly
look
young
anything
guy.
like us. Are you
Exactly,
kidding?
exactly. So
Well, and maybe he will inspire generations below him to keep the craft going. I mean,
Absolutely.
because that's pretty special what he
I
does.
love to find out how he got into that. I mean, that is
Yeah.
really, really cool.
Talk about
Yeah.
specialized.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
is cool. That is
Yeah.
cool.
So
I'll wrap up. I mean, because I know we're getting close here, but I'm going to, besides a tribute to Richard Keller
Yes.
and the hat, which I'll probably wear more than once. It's actually pretty comfortable.
Yeah.
It's cute.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like it. Looks good.
So my dad passed about 4 months ago. So I was going through all of his stuff. And he had a certain box that I never knew existed. And it was all of his high school, college stuff.
Oh, cool.
And in it is an envelope with a piece of paper, and I open it up, and it's the sales slip for the 52 MGTD. And I think we've got old film of it. I think we transferred it. It's part of that.
We do have some old film of that car, I think.
And I think that's the one it is. That's what it is. But I've got the sales slip, and then right behind it was a photo of him standing there as a football player.
Whoa.
Because he played college football in Tarkio,
cool.
Missouri. And so they were all kind of stuck together. But he's obviously he's one of the reasons I was I got into cars.
Yeah.
He was always talking about it. Uncle Eddie was always talking about it. And my grandfather was into cars, and he was a tool and die maker who built, tools for the auto industry. I mean, and tools for pretty much any industry, but, in Buffalo, it's pretty blue collar, and it's, it's the Harrison radiator, and you had all those up there. And everything was connected to the automotive industry up there. And so that's just how I grew up. And it was fun to see that paperwork. And I actually brought it here, so I'm going to take a screenshot of it. We'll pop it up so everybody can see it.
That's so cool.
That reminds me of a story of when I was a kid. My uncle Armando, he had a Ford Capri, a yellow one, and that thing was like the coolest thing on the planet. I think he had one of like those alarm things that had the keypad inside the dash, and I was like, "What does that do?" Whatever.
Start pushing things.
Yeah, and he had project cars around the house, and I just, my brother and I vandalized it, I think, one time. But it just reminded me because, like, I remember being in that car, probably without a seat, a child seat, and whatever, just kind of tooling around there.
But that was way back when.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back when times were
Exactly.
fun. And I remember. I think that's probably one of the biggest reasons. My dad was a car guy, but my uncle was too. And just having that ride in those cars, and remember, my aunt just sent me a picture of it recently, and I'll post it. But I was just like, I remember that car. How cool was that car?
Yeah.
And every time I hear Ford Capri, I think of my uncle. So it's just interesting that you bring that up with your Uncle Eddie.
I'm sensing a theme here because my uncle was the same way. My Uncle Ray, who's still alive, lives up in Monterey. Near Laguna Seca, right? I have memories of a kid in Camarillo, him pulling up to my grandparents at Easter in a right-hand drive Rolls Royce,
Wow.
Silver Phantom.
Fancy.
And then 2 years later, he pulled up in a DeLorean.
Oh.
And he had one of the original 240Zs, like maybe a 69, a 70.
Wow.
So my uncle was a cool car guy. He lived down in Manhattan Beach, which there's no place to park cars, but my uncle was a cool car guy too.
So you were
That's
surrounded by
awesome.
car guys, but you're not one.
You're
Is that
such
what
a
you're trying to tell
disappointment
us?
to your family, Dan.
I am. I have an appreciation for nice cars. Let's put it that way. I may not own one. I may not drive one, but I have an
FYI,
appreciation.
no one buys the non-car guy thing, Dan. Just so you know.
I still drive a Corolla though, so how much of a car guy
It's
can
all
I
right.
be?
I saw you diss my Tesla on the Porsche show, so I'm a car guy and I drive a Tesla. So
Yeah.
And he disses my old Hyundai, and I haven't had it since
That's
1994.
true. That's true. Do you have any cars we can diss, Christina?
Actually, well, my mom had a car growing up that was embarrassing. So I made her drop me off at school around the corner.
What was it?
It was a Pacer.
Oh, AMC
And it
Pacer.
was brown.
Oh, geez,
it
a
was even
brown
worse.
Pacer.
It was bad. It was a bad looking car.
So that was before Wayne's World made that car.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was embarrassing.
Actually, I don't know if Wayne's World did
But
that.
on that theme, though, so my dad, because I grew up in Buffalo, and then we moved to California. But just before we moved, I think my dad bought it a couple years before, 1974 AMC Gremlin.
Oh,
Ooh, the
Gremlin.
Gremlin.
So we moved to
Okay.
California. It's a total rust bucket.
Yeah.
Guess what my first car was
The
a rusted
Gremlin?
out
The
1974 Gremlin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the Gremlins have a little bit more credit compared to the Pacers, though, too.
I think they're both equally
Yeah, I was about to say.
I mean, they were both equally hated,
Yes.
but now they're kind of
Yes,
like
yes,
cool
yes.
because they were
Oh,
hated.
people
Yeah.
collect them now and think they're
Yeah,
cool.
yeah,
and-
yeah.
If they didn't rust away,
Yeah.
if they're still there.
Yeah.
Well, the Gremlin X, we saw when I did I judged a car show 2 weeks ago, Lemon Festival in Goleta. Mm-hmm. I walk up, one of the cars I get to judge, Gremlin X.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the X had the V8.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and they didn't
V8
make
in a
many of
little
those.
car like that.
Well, here's
Yeah.
the thing, because I was sitting there talking to the owner about it, and we're talking about a Gremlin with a V8. It's
pretty rare.
really rare. And,
Yeah.
and the question was, well, why? Well, my guess is that Gremlins really were supposed to be gas like gas misers
Right,
back when
right.
the gas
The
crisis started.
the OPEC era,
right.
right?
And so people were buying those because they wanted, good gas mileage. Throwing a V8 in it blew that out of the water.
Yeah.
And if you had a V8, you were trying to make a muscle car, you're not going to compete with a CUDA or anything like that. So people it fell into this weird niche.
It's
Who's gonna
neither
buy a
here nor
V8
there, as
Gremlin,
they say.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it was
funny.
super clean.
We didn't do our most hated car episode yet. That's got to come up, Gabe. We got to do that.
We need to.
The most hated, most controversial hated cars. We need to do an
So
episode.
if you
on
want
that.
if you want to piss off a bunch of people, because there's somebody who loves whatever we're going to talk
Of course.
about.
Yeah.
But to each their own, right?
Yeah,
That's
like
right.
Okay, so that brings up a second call to action that we want our listeners to do. Send us pictures and stories of your car that, well, this is in general, but send us pictures of your car that you think that people hate or like or whatever.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Or you just have a funny story about your uncle, Eddie, doing some, weird stuff,
Yeah.
I think
that
it
car.
would be funny to do a little segment on that show where we people send in their cars and we roast people's cars.
Oh yeah.
What the hell were you thinking there?
As long as we have their permission, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I love the roast idea. Roasting is fun.
Well,
Everyone
it's-
loves a roast,
Yes,
right?
they
It's
do.
funny because you can roast a car, but then there'll be a whole slew of people that is like, dude, that car's you're crazy. That's a great
Do you know
car.
how cool
Yeah.
that is?
Yeah. You're
Don't you know why? That's
you're
a
like
cool-
you don't know anything.
Yeah.
And
do
that's
your research.
Yeah, that's what's great about the car community, though. Everybody has their opinions. Everybody has the things they like and don't like, and that's why it's nice to pick and choose car shows nowadays. Because some people like Porsches, some people
Yeah.
don't. It's some people like supercars, some people don't.
Yeah.
All right, so we've completely gone off topic.
We have.
Yeah, I know.
But you know what though? This brings up an interesting point because you said you just judged a car show, and I was asked to judge the same car show, but I said no because I'm too biased. You can't ask me. I will totally rig that election, right? When you judge a car show, or do you think? And you've been involved with so many car shows, Christina.
Yeah, I've been a judge at a car show too.
When you judge a car at a car show, do you ever consider the owner and the owner's story?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay, so do you think it's critical when you're judging a car, you base it off of the story and the owner of the car? In general, not just for the ones that you've done.
It plays a part in
Yeah.
my
No,
judging.
that's what I would say.
But I wouldn't base it entirely on that. I would say it's probably about at least a quarter of what I try and judge on.
Usually you've got categories, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And even if it's listed or not, I kind of in my head, I throw a little owner story in there.
Right.
Okay. See, this is why I can't be a judge because the owner could be a complete dickhead, but he's got an awesome rotor. And I'm voting for that fucking car. So don't ever ask me to be a judge at a car show. I'm the worst guy.
That's why I like it when people are with their cars at car shows,
Yeah.
so that you
Yeah.
have a chance to talk to
You
them
can
about
talk
their
to 'em.
car,
Sure.
Yeah.
and you get a real sense of their passion for their car. And to me, that's more special than dropping it off at a shop and paying $10,000 for somebody to do
Yeah.
something.
Well,
And another reason
Yeah.
to stick around with your car, I'd say I think I judged that weekend 15 cars, something like that. And there were, I think, about 100 cars, but I had 15, a group of 15. I'd say out of the 15, there were probably 4 or 5 where there was no owner and everything was shut and locked up.
Yeah.
Pretty hard to judge.
Was it in a rough neighborhood?
No. No, I mean, you're surrounded by a bunch of lemon people. What's there to be afraid of? So I have to judge. I'm supposed to judge the trunk. I'm supposed to judge the engine bay. I'm supposed to the interior, and I'm trying to look through a window and can't find anybody. That's a mistake.
Yeah.
So if I can't see it, I can't judge it. If I can't judge it, you're not going to get points. And
I wonder if you
Knock it
could
down.
win just off of a cool story.
I've heard of people.
Yeah?
I know a lot of friends that are judges at different shows, and they've told me that they absolutely picked a car because of the story.
Really?
Yep. Yeah.
Maybe we should do a virtual car show with everybody's story, and then we put it on the website. And
That's cool.
Let's pick the car.
well, you've already said you're biased. If there's
I won't
anybody-
be a judge. You
No,
and Dan and
yeah.
Christina can be a
I was
judge.
about to say, one rotary shows up and he's going to win, right?
Winner, rotary.
Yeah.
winner.
Maybe we can get Helm to show up for that one.
Actually, he would because he is all about the weird details that no one cares about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I wouldn't be. I'll be a promoter. I'm a good promoter for the show, but I won't actually be a judge. So I'll have to worry about me being biased.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm not buying it.
I hope nobody sees me at 7 Stock thinking that I judge the cars.
Oh my
because
gosh.
Oh boy, the green ribbons, right?
I just carry the awards for Bernie for him to hand them out. So, which by the way, Christina will be at 7 Stock.
Yeah.
Miss Motorhead booth.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes, and we'll
And
be
we'll
there.
be there.
We'll be
we'll
at
be
7
there.
Stock.
We'll be
Yeah,
at 7
Yeah.
Stock. So
Yeah.
It's gonna be a fun time. I'm excited.
for sure.
We'll be there Friday night. We'll be hungover by Saturday morning.
pretty much.
All right.
I need to book my hotel. That reminds me.
I think Beth wants to go too.
Okay. She's gonna love
Well,
it.
she said she wants. She'll
She'll
to go.
live
We'll
for
see
at
what
least 10
happens
minutes.
on
I would love
Thursday.
for her to be there. I
Yeah,
think that'd be
we'll see
great.
what
Tell her
happens.
she can
We'll see
come
if-
hang out at the booth with the girls.
Yeah.
If she
Oh,
gets
there you go.
bored.
Yeah. 7 Stock should be fun. It'll be fun.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We cover everything, and we
think so.
left it, and we ended the show on a
I know.
high note.
Yes.
Boy, did we veer off topic.
Boy,
Yeah.
we did.
Wow, did
That's
we.
all right.
But that's
amazing.
typical, right?
But 2/3 was on topic. so-
Well, at least we veered off towards the end, so if
Yeah.
people have already tuned out, they won't miss anything.
true,
Yeah.
true,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
Are you gonna add a? You're gonna add a subscribe button. So if
We have been, yeah. We have.
okay.
We have. A
Is it up
subscribe
here
button.
or is it down?
No, it's down low.
It's down low. So
Now
it's
just keep doing
Point
that.
at your
CJ.
crotch.
Just keep doing
Point at your crotch, CJ. There you go.
It's
Right.
nowhere near where you're pointing, by the way.
Is it? Is it down here?
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
down there.
Down
yeah.
here?
It's
Somewhere
centered.
down
It's
there.
centered.
The good thing is, CJ, is that on the audio podcast, no one will ever see it, so
No.
don't worry about it. Just,
Why is everybody laughing? CJ's making an asshole of himself. All right. Thanks for watching, listening. Whenever you watch and listen on, please like, follow, subscribe, and we thank you for watching. And we will see you. That's what I got to say. We will see you west of Tulsa.